After a double defeat weekend for both senior teams, Shells throw the kitchen at Drogheda and Cork City to visit Tolka this Friday. There's no need for the Monday blues as Dunny's here to give us reasons to be positive. Hi Dunny, how are you doing today?
How you doing, Andy? Not sure about the reasons to be positive, but we're still here. Time heals all wounds, etc. So yeah, not a great weekend. Bit of a coming back down to earth, but sure, maybe we had it too good for too long.
Yeah, well, it's the early days. I think, as you mentioned before, sometimes it's like Dublin bus games come along and then you get two defeats. Not something, thankfully, that happens very often, but obviously a disappointing result on Friday night against Drogheda. And again, then on Saturday with the women's team taking on Shamrock Rovers, it was all going so well. But alas, almost last kick of the game, saw Rovers nick it. So we'll get to Drogheda review and Cork City preview shortly. But let's start on Saturday afternoon, Dunny. New kick-off time. Decent crowd at Tolka. Shells got off to the perfect start and they were cruising, business as usual. But then seemed to slip away from them.
Yeah, we might kind of park the on field and off field thing, separate them, and I'll talk about the match first. There was quite a lot of positivity off the field and just how things have been run, which I think would bear dwelling on. But on the field, look, overall, I thought the performance was actually more encouraging than the Athlone game. It was less scrappy. It was more of a full sort of unified, knitted together performance. I thought we had longer periods of dominance. We didn't allow Rovers as many attempts on our goal, I would argue, as Athlone had. Obviously, we made the perfect start, and we looked threatening shooting into the Ballybock end, where the loyal fans were behind the goal, and I thought we were full value for it. Until it started, it slipped away. We conceded a poor goal from our point of view, and then a bit of a capitulation. Then let's be honest, we've said to ape Damien Duff and his line of if you can't win the game, don't lose it. We were good value, I thought, for the 3 points, looking comfortable enough, and then look, once that gets shaken, we really should have had the wherewithal and the collective mindset to not concede more than one. I know Rovers threw stuff at us, but ultimately the goal that won them the game came, I think, from poor possession on our behalf, individual error, a bit of collective sort of unawareness of what was happening, and really in injury time at home on the opening day, it's it's not really great. It's not. You don't want to get too down with the first game, the first result. But when you should have had three, you're settling for one to leave with nothing is very disappointing.
Do you think that it's easy to say now, of course, but Rachel Graham went off, who seemed to control the game, and especially in the absence of Alex Kavanagh, and then Kate Mooney was taken off, who Kate scored the goal in the first minute. As you said, what surprised me was how open Shells were, particularly at the very death. They seemed to be carved open too easily, which is very unlike the team.
Yeah,
Hopefully, that's something they learn from quickly. But before the game, I think most people probably would have fancied Shells. But Rover stuck in there, and if you don't put teams away, you're always likely to leave yourself open. There was a little bit of controversy about one or two decisions. I don't know if you saw. I know you're down the Ballybock end, Donny, but there was big shouts for a penalty, and then Noel Murray tucked away a nice finish. I think Kate Mooney went up for a challenge with the keeper, Katie Keane. Now, in my position as commentator, I didn't see any issue with it, but the referee blew up. But that's
yeah,
just the way it goes sometimes.
yeah. That was definitely the feeling at the time. where I was that we were coming afoul of multiple decisions that could have impacted the game regarding potential penalties, and that disallowed goal for, again, I was literally in the worst place in the ground to have a view of it. So I might ask you, and you might have had the benefit of a replay. I'm not sure, but it looked very soft, and the ball was put in the net. It looked like the referee was almost didn't blow until the ball had hit the net as well, rather than immediately for the contact, which is more infuriating, but the decisions really, in the case of like, should that you'd like to think they'd balance out. Well, they certainly didn't feel like they were balancing out in the 90 minutes.
Yeah, well, from my position, I don't see what. Well, we know goalkeepers always get the benefit of the doubt, but I just this one was a bit of a bizarre decision. I didn't think there was any foul at all. You're entitled to go up and head the ball, and I think even the Rovers players knew that they got away with one. But that's the way it goes. You got to take the rough with the smooth. We did the podcast last week with brilliant Shauna Cook. So anyone who hasn't listened to it, I'd really recommend going back to listen to it. It's in the queue ahead of this one, episode 6. Shauna talks a lot of honestly, and her always very entertaining listening to Shauna. She's always very direct with her opinions for the season ahead. So Shells travel to newcomers this Saturday against Waterford. Obviously, do you think Waterford might be knuckling down for a bit of reaction after the weekend's results, Dunny?
Hard to know. I mean, I hope we can bounce back. I think we've got no option but to do so. Talking about referees' decisions and so on, all of those things are true, and it's our opinion on them anyway. It certainly seemed that we were a bit hard done by, but the fact remains, I think, and it's worth repeating, that it was in our hands to leave with a result against a team that might be thereabouts with us this season, that might be, if rumours are to be believed, signing Risha Littlejohn to strengthen their team. That would be a massive coup if that were to come to fruition. So to gift them a 3-point head start, we've really shot ourselves in the foot there. The referee had nothing to do with their second goal, regardless of what we should have had before then. We should know at this stage after last season that in games of significance, what it might feel like to be on the wrong end of a decision. This isn't our first rodeo. And again, collectively, we should have employed more clinical game management, I think, just to see it out and get the draw. So I hope that we don't get overly emotional about it. The fact that we've already lost the same amount of games in the league as we did in the entirety of last season, and that we can go and bounce back, and not to be disrespectful, but at a new side in their first season in the division, and Shell's coming to town, you'd expect that this is the type of fixture that might suit us. I'll be there on Saturday anyway, celebrating my 1-year wedding anniversary, in the most romantic setting possible at the RSC.
You are an old romantic, Dunny. Don't let anyone else say anything different. Just before we move on, it was a good atmosphere at the game. It was a lovely day. I thought this is the only time I'm going to mention the pitch, but I walked the pitch, and if anyone else complains to me about the pitch this year, they can take a hike. The pitch is as good as it can be for this time of year. But yeah, it was a good occasion. Great to see so many kids, and early signs that the new new community officer on the girls' side, Kristen Sample, is getting stuck in and doing some great work already.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't want to not mention Kristen. I met with her a couple of weeks ago. Just had a coffee, and we talked about a lot of things to do with the women's side. And she's some Shells fans might remember as Sligo Rovers goalkeeper in the league. she has a lot of very good ideas. She understands the game. She understands the league. She's getting to grips with the club, and she's working very hard with community engagement through clubs and schools primarily. Um, there were almost, I believe, 50 kids from Sword Celtic there at the match on Saturday. The numbers, attendance wise, overall for the game Saturday and the previous President's Cup game were much higher than they had been for our averages last season. So it's a great early sign. She was giving posters out to people as they came in. Really, really nice poster with a team shot from the President's Cup victory, with the fixtures printed on the poster, and a QR code as well for people to be able to scan to buy tickets and to see any maybe updated fixtures if sometimes the FAI, as we know, can move fixture dates and stuff around. The QR code will help you navigate that. And a brilliant little souvenir for young and old alike, but particularly for the kids to be able to go onto the pitch afterwards and meet with the players, get signatures and autographs, that type of thing. And yeah, it was attendance is good, atmosphere was good. There was a queue to get in when I arrived. Something I can't remember the last time that happened on a Saturday. And the bar being open throughout the match, which is great. People coming and going with their plastic cups to sort of to enjoy the match their own way. And people may have noticed, but for the first time ever outside Tolka Park, there is now a dual sign for the next home men's game and the next home women's game, something that had been overlooked up until this point. And Neil Dawes set the wheels in motion for that. So now, a parity of access, a parity of visibility as well there. So people when they're going past Tolka know if there's a game on, exactly when and who will be playing, and not just the men's team.
All very valuable things to see at Tolka Park. So, chain up, everyone. We'll hopefully see the ladies' team, the women's team, get back in action this Saturday, with 3 points on the road away to Waterford. Dunny, that was the second blow of the weekend. The first blow of the weekend happened, 16, 18 hours before that, on a lovely evening for football, Friday night in Tolka Park. Everything was going so well till around the third or fourth minute, and then Shells shot ourselves in the foot again.
Yeah, it's becoming a bit of a theme, that, isn't it? It's certainly the theme of the weekend, but for the men's side, it's becoming almost a weekly occurrence in some respect. Whether it's poor game management after a goal or whatever it might be. Yeah, again, just to sort of set the scene, like the official attendance, 4,742, very, very big. That's basically a home sellout for a non-Dublin derby. We spoke last week about how the club could go about, keeping the good vibes, increasing attendances, or trying to sort of maintain attendances for non-Dublin derbies is what I'd kind of alluded to, and we basically have done that. But unfortunately, that's certainly the most frustrating game I think most of those 4,200 Shells fans will have seen from the Reds in months and months since we came out of that sticky patch on our way to winning the title last year. So yeah, a very poor start, and frankly, like the thing that sort of bugs me the most really is that this we knew exactly what we were walking into here. Drogheda have conceded the fewest goals of any team in the league. Drogheda were able to hold Pats and other teams to one or fewer goals. If you give them a head start, it's almost like getting a man sent off in the first 5 minutes. You're really creating a rod for your own back for the rest of the match. We gave them a goal head start. Now it was a fantastic finish. I'm sure on the Drogheda channels, they won't be saying that it was a Shells issue at all, that it was just brilliant work and a magnificent finish. And look, there's elements of that to it, but we certainly contributed, I think, and we can talk about maybe selection and shape and square pegs and round holes in a moment. But effectively, when you give the most dogged team in the division, who are absolutely flying, a head start, um, we would have been doing well to come away with a point. And as it transpired, we got nothing.
We have some questions in our mailbox this week, which I'm delighted to say, which touch on those, Dunny. So I might come back to them in just a minute. The Damien Duff afterwards, as usual, I thought he was fairly honest. He summed it up. He felt that Chelsea had utter domination. Yeah, I'd agree with that. But stats, sometimes I think there's too much emphasis on stats and data and so on. I think everyone could see Chelsea were dominating the game. But as he said also, there's a lot of huff and puff, and that sometimes I think we all agree with this bit is that the players just need to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and just try and work it out themselves. When you see Drogheda, as we touched on this last week, Dunny, so we can take some credit for that. We knew what we were getting into. They played, I would say, the perfect away game. They just really set up to make things difficult. Um, Credit to Kevin Doherty and his team. I think they gave a masterclass in how to frustrate people. But do the fans in particular just need to accept it? Like sometimes you just hit a wall like this. It's not every week it's going to be wonderful. And the stuff we saw against Derry, this was a very different performance. Whereas Derry was a little bit ding dong back to front. 2 or 3 goals in the first 15 minutes. Whereas Drogheda, quite clearly, we knew what was coming, and we just couldn't adapt to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, two opinions can both operate simultaneously here. I think we can be disappointed and we can question uh, decisions or application on one hand, while at the same time not losing the run of ourselves and feeling like the end is nigh. So absolutely, from my perspective anyway, I'm not jumping to any conclusions about we're in for a tough season, or we may as well forget about retaining the title, or we'll be doing well to get Europe, or any of that kind of macro stuff. It's far too early for that. But this defeat comes at the end of a week where we got 2 points from 9. We led in 2 of those games, and 2 of those games were at home, and arguably on paper, you would have said that maybe this Friday last was the easier fixture, albeit Drogheda in the form of their lives. Um, and Kev Doherty is maximising what he's got at his disposal. So I think we can maybe agree that right now, or in the last 7 days, we haven't maximised what was at our disposal. But that doesn't mean that this has to drag on and be a long term thing, or that there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. We can, we've got a very good opportunity again on Friday to put it right and to start things rolling. Pats have shown it. You string two wins together and everything's rosy in the garden again. And we're very capable of doing that. We've got Cork, followed by Sligo, I think. If someone told me we were going to get 6 points from those 2 games, I wouldn't disagree. But unfortunately, 3 games without a win, only 1 clean sheet in the league season so far. And as I said, 2 points from 9 puts a bit of unneeded pressure, you might say, on Friday's game, because now you're going into Friday where this is a game, again, on paper that you'd be like, well, Shells should be favourites. We're at home. We will be expecting to score, and we'll be expecting to win.
Yep.
Where, and there's inherent pitfalls with expectations like that when you come off a bad week.
There's big expectations on Ellis Chapman. I think it's fair to say that he was carrying maybe a knock in pre-season, so he's still getting back up to full speed. How did you think he did last Friday, Dunny?
I think it appears to me now that we haven't seen the best of Ellis Chapman. We haven't seen the sort of swashbuckling player that Sligo had last year, and I think there's probably more than one reason behind that. I think, as you alluded to there, he didn't complete a full pre-season. He kind of only got the tail end of it. I think due to niggles, he only took part in some of the latter pre-season games. So he could be, who knows how many weeks behind. Who knows how many weeks behind the other players he might be, or how he might feel about his own fitness. He's been given two 90-minute stints, if I'm not mistaken, Monday at Galway and on Friday in Tolka, and hasn't looked like the player that I would have liked to have seen. I think he's had snapshots at goal, and maybe if one or two of them had gone in, he had a chance in Galway that went over. He had a couple of chances in Tolka on Friday. If they go in off the underside of the bar or whatever, then probably the rest of his performance gets glossed over. Look, I'd be loath to, to sort of make a declaration on someone who so clearly demonstrated his ability last year in the division, including in games against ourselves, to be someone who has a very good amount of talent for this division. But perhaps a little like Harry Wood last year when he came back to us and something just wasn't clicking and it just didn't feel quite right. I'm getting that kind of vibe from Ellis Chapman now. And I don't know if we're playing him in the right place. Wide left on Friday. When he gave the interview when he arrived at the club, he said he had been a defensive midfielder prior to signing for Sligo, and that playing for Sligo in that more advanced position of sort of a number 8 or attacking midfielder, or sometimes even a number 10, was kind of new to him, but he took to it very well, the sort of freedom that Sligo allowed him to play with. I don't think we've found a system that suits him yet, and I think that might be sort of dovetailing in a negative sense with his lack of sharpness from a curtailed pre-season.
Well, he is a top player in the league. Let's just touch again on the whole formation or attack. Let's say formation the other night, Dunny. Just watching from the stands, to me, wasn't quite sure of the formation. It's none of my business, it's the manager's call. But in the games we've seen so far this year, there seems to be a little bit, from what I can see, more changes in formation from first half to second half. Now that's completely up to the manager and his coaching staff. Games, sometimes you need to adapt. But am I over egging this, or do you feel that there has been a little bit too much chopping and changing in the first 5 games?
Yeah, it's a fine line. It's a sort of a tightrope you walk, isn't it? Where I think we were here talking about the beauty of being able to be fluid and adaptable within games, and players exhibiting high levels of footballing intellect by being able to switch in and out seamlessly, and when results are going your way and when you're playing well, that looks great, sounds great. There was an air of frustration I felt in Tolka, obviously, on Friday, because we had basically 90 plus minutes of waiting and striving and hoping for a goal that never came. And I think there was a sense of sort of panic and edginess around the place. And I have here, just looking at my notes here, I have a sort of fluidity versus chaos and fracture. And fluidity versus fracture, and that's, if we're talking about shape changing, it's one thing being fluid where it sort of happens, as I said, seamlessly, versus flipping from one, that's not working, try something else, that doesn't work, go back. You know what I mean? And on Friday it felt a bit like the latter, where we were flipping from one system to another, players were coming and going, players were being played in positions that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to show up in. Mark Coyle ended up at centre back um, towards the end of the game, while Lewis Temple is on the bench, having played that position, and the manager being complimentary of his performance on Monday. And look, this is no second guessing of Damien Duff and the management staff, but you have to say what you see, and I don't know if it worked for us on Friday. I wonder if we maybe just rolled with the same formation as Monday. Perhaps we wanted to show a bit more ambition, and instead of playing with three centre backs and wing backs, maybe we thought we could bring the game to Drogheda more, with the four at the back and Meepo and Boyd up top, and go a bit more traditional. And frankly, again, I wrote down here sort of ahead of Cork, because there's an argument now where, like, who's really impressed beyond maybe two or three players. I thought Kerr McInroy was exceptional the other night, but because the last week has been a bit dour and a bit disappointing in overall, you could say, well, there's not many players putting their hands up to grab a shirt and be like, well, you have to pick me. But ideally, what you might like to see now from Friday onwards is a bit more resolution, and to, like, okay, what are we playing and who is in that position? If we're playing 4-4-2, great. We have plenty of wingers at the football club, some of whom have seen almost no game time, some who have seen quite a bit, and everything in between, really. But this adaptability now, a week on, seems more like fracture to me, and maybe getting back to to basics wouldn't be a bad idea.
Well, skipper Mark Coyle, he understandably was a little bit downbeat and under, um, you know, uh, disappointed, of course, with the results. But he said that the players know what they have to fix and they'll fix it right away. Do you think anything in particular he can pinpoint there, Dunny, or that he's referring to?
It's a curious enough comment, all right, because frankly, I forced myself to watch the highlights back before coming on the pod, because professionalism, but I didn't want to. And but what I recall from the night as well, we had quite a number of chances. We had a potential penalty that wasn't included in the highlights, so I'm not sure. I haven't seen that one back. Maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, from where sorry to interrupt, Tony. From where I was up that end behind the goal, it was an absolute penalty. It was as clear as day.
Yeah, it looked that way from where I was. I was in sort of section D, the front of the D on the riverside down the front. But yeah, it looked like a penalty to me. But again, as we said about the women's game, you plough on. And we had chances. Boyd, you missed the target completely off his weaker left foot from a very good position. And then Kerr McInroy, the only blot on his copy for me really on the night was he missed arguably an even better chance, and probably from our perspective the chance of the game, on his favourite left foot, square in front of the goal. Again, neither shot troubling Dennison, who had made a good save a little bit before that. But the reason I bring these up is that we had multiple chances, and on another day one of them goes in and you get the penalty, you come away with a hard fought 2-1, and the narrative is very different. To Mark Coyle is maybe saying, we knew if we stuck at it we'd grind it out, blah blah blah. Frankly, as Mark Coyle finished as a right-sided centre back, a position I'm pretty sure he's never played in his life. How he might be saying, "Oh, we know exactly what it is." I mean, it looked like the loonies had taken over the asylum a little bit by the end of the game. There was just bodies everywhere. People, like, there was the shape and structure seemed to have gone out the window. And look, we were pushing on for an equaliser, so to some degree that happens. But I'm not sure what he's referencing. We had a huge amount of the ball, and we created chances. So I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be able to put my finger on one thing and say, "Oh yeah, that's the thing that we should fix." And I doubt he would be, calling into question shape or anything tactical like that. So maybe he just thinks that if they, I don't know, if they were given another chance at it, that they'd find a breakthrough or something, and maybe he's just trying to allay some fears. But yeah, there was no one uh, quick fix solution that I saw. I mean, Drogheda did the exact same thing to Bowes the week before. This, they gave Bowes 80% of the ball, and I think Bowes had 2 shots on goal in the whole game, and they won 1-0. So again, we had our eyes wide open going into this, and they did the exact same thing to us.
Yeah, well, I think with a captain like Mark Hoyle, we can put our faith in him to chat with the boys. As you said, Dunny, like, it's not the end of the world. You're going to lose games during the season. It did. If I can cast your mind back to a very famous Ireland game in 2001 against Holland in Lansdowne Road, a game that Damien Duff played in, when Louis van Gaal 1-0 down to Ireland. He threw on Van Hooijdonk, Van Nistelrooy, Roy Mackay, and I think Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. Like, he went all in, and they still couldn't get past the Irish back line. I was there that day, and I remember a young Damien Duff had one of the games of his career. So it's not the end of the world, folks. We have a good chance to get back on track this Friday with Cork City in town. Now, Dunny, before we move on, we've got a couple of questions in here from our wonderful listeners. Some of them we just sort of touched on, but if we don't mind, we go through them. Let's see. This is no name on this one. Is there an overemphasis on the recycling of the ball being more important than direct play? I assume that means just getting the ball into the box, getting it into the mix, rather than that. People can get frustrated sometimes when they see the retention of the ball, but is that just the way the game is at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, this is a prevailing narrative that you hear a lot now, where on every level of the game, whether it's in the UK or abroad, or I mean further abroad in Europe or domestically. Again, looking at it, I think this is probably slightly reactionary based on what we've just seen on Friday and the frustration of that. You know what I mean? Like, I thought the possession based approach that we took in Galway was very sensible, because we were away and we knew the kind of fight that we had on our hands there, and we spoke about that being sort of possession with purpose, but the purpose was kind of more of a long-term banking of legginess in the opposition and an attempt to sort of quell the home fervor from the support and whatnot. But when you're a goal down after 3 minutes at home, you're not given the same, you're not given 45 minutes of patience maybe to pass from side to side, to recycle and go sort of one side to another, probe in the middle and come back around. We do a fair bit of it. I'd argue that we do that, but also go along. It seems like it's a little bit of, it's either one or the other, I find, whereby like either we're stringing 50 passes together, and then if we just get browned off with it, Paddy Barrett will sling one 50 yards. But like, one of our best chances on Friday came from that direct ball. I think it was Barrett. Boyd knocked it down facing away from goal with a lovely cushion header. I think it might have been Chapman on his favourite left foot again, hitting it. Oh, Dennison made the save. Right? Yeah, that was the one.
Good strike, good save. Yeah,
that was the one that was saved. So there's no harm in, if I think in trying to probe, and then if you don't see anything, and you've got to, particularly with Boyd and Meepo going long, I actually think the mix is working overall better now. Like, I do recall a couple of years ago doing my nut in at the Belfield Bowl in a 0-0, just constantly watching the fullback go back to the centre back and back out again. I mean, it was excruciating stuff. And we never really had that sort of second option. I feel we have that second option now. Ultimately, I think, again, you'd like to see maybe a winger beat a man and whip a ball in, or somebody kind of break lines like Harry Wood can, or Ray Tulloch did it once over on the main stand side in the second half. He came in through two people and set a move in motion. So there's not a lot of that now. maybe on. It's been said, when the pitches dry out and to get a bit better, maybe our more silky players might be able to show a bit more of it. But I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. Now, that's kind of the way the game is going. But I think our plan B we use regularly enough to not be overly concerned about it. I think we're just going to have to be a bit more patient.
We have a couple of questions here that touched on what you mentioned earlier about Mark Coyle finishing the game. It looked like centre back or right to centre. I'll try to group these together. People are asking, is that a lack of preparation, or was it more just to do with the circumstances of the last gasp? Let's get up there and give it a go.
Yeah, I spoke to some people behind the goal on Saturday about this at the women's game. Just sort of, we were just chewing the cud on reflection of what had happened. The weird thing, aesthetically, the weird thing is you have Lewis Temple sitting on the bench, and he's probably wondering, what have I done to not get picked? Maybe he probably thought he might have been in with a shout of a start, having played pretty well on Monday, and then not only doesn't start but sees a centre midfielder playing in his position before the game concludes. Now, it was put to me on Saturday that there's an argument for the manager wanting Mark Coyle on the pitch in any sort of capacity. In that, it was almost as if we were playing against 10 men, where just we need bodies with a certain sort of attacking quality to them, and someone who can make something happen. And he didn't want to take his captain off in what might have been seen as a defensive move. He wanted to sort of offensively move. But when you couple it with starting Evan Caffrey in his third position of the season at right back, which we could argue played a hand in the goal. Ellis Chapman in a new position for him on the left flank. It lent to the sort of chaotic feel of the evening. But again, so long as we don't start seeing it every week, I think we might just see this as an anomaly and look back and go, yeah, do you remember that mad game when, it was all over the place? Now, I mean, we could have conceded on the break. There was one.
Yeah,
there was one case in particular where I think it was Mark Coyle and Pardy Barrett were a little too slow on the uptake on a ball over the top towards the end. Now, had we been done 2-0, perhaps the outcry might have been more about why you don't have a defender playing in defence when we're trying to chase a game. But we'll sort of bow to the greater knowledge of the coaching ticket, I think, and just assume chalk this one up to a bit of a weird night at the office. And I think it's unlikely we'll see that again.
Yeah, there was that sort of an odd feeling around the ground. So look, I think we're all in the game long enough to know that the players give absolutely everything, and sometimes it's just not our way. It just doesn't go our way. I have one final question here, Dunny, from Rossi. So thank you to Rossi. This is he says, when the time comes, is Kevin Doherty a contender to replace Damien Duff? Now, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, because we're hopefully talking years away.
Yeah. Well, of course.
Sorry, Donny. I know Kevin's doing a great job, but is he just perhaps the flavour of the month, or is it something that could happen in many years?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, yeah. Obviously, the proviso is that we'd like Duff to have a lifetime contract and all that, but nothing is forever. Kev, Kev came. I would have been coaching with the 18s when Kev was involved with the 19s, and not a nicer man would you ever meet. Myself and Davey O'Connor, who's the strength and conditioning coach now with the women's team, took the last iteration of the under 18s, Fado, and Kev had the 19s. And he was cutting his teeth then, and obviously he went on to be the senior men's manager. and has really gone from strength to. I mean, he took over us at a time where, that wouldn't have been a good career move for anybody. Really, we were in bad nick on and off the field. It was a poor time to be a Shells fan or to be involved with the club at all. But I definitely don't think he's favourite of the month. Um, it's been a hell of a long month if that's the case. Because frankly, since Tim Clancy left, he,
Yeah.
it's sort of accepted that he's done an astounding job. The only caveat you might have there is, some managers get pigeonholed with being able to do more with less. And then perhaps if they're, in the same way that some managers get pigeonholed by being checkbook managers or whatever, and only being able to win when they have, unfettered access to Nazi gold. But and Kev is obviously in the former camp where you might think, okay, well, if he's given a budget and if he's expected to go and win things, if he's expected to challenge and compete and get European football and so on, could he deliver? But it would be hard to argue on the basis of the trophy last year and what he's managed to do consistently at Drogheda that if there was a vacancy in the morning at any of the clubs in Dublin, frankly, it would be hard to see that Kev Doherty's name wouldn't be associated with that, considering he only put down his bag of posts last year for the first time. You know what I mean? So like this is his first real foray now into professional management. So we could certainly do worse, I think.
Yeah, well, that was a bit of a cheeky question there from Rossi, but people send them in. We'll ask them, Dunny. Thank you very much. Show notes will have all the places you can get in touch with us. We're on all the social media pages. You can email us. So please do get in touch with any questions. Donny, let's look ahead to Friday. I suppose the perfect way to try and get over a previous Friday night hangover is to have another home game. And it's good to see Cork City back. So your old buddy Tim Clancy's in town. What do you think? What do you think Cork can expect from a fired up Shelburne?
Well, I mean, anything could happen, right? Anything could happen. I'd like to initially, as we've touched upon, you'd like to see that we'd set out a stall in regards to our 11, our selection, our formation, that we're like, okay, these are the boys that I believe are showing themselves to be the ones that should be in the team. I kind of feel like we've been making a lot of subs in games as well, and there's still a sense with so many quality players in the building that kind of everybody's getting a chance, and it'd be unfair to leave this person out, it'd be unfair to leave that person out, and everyone's getting minutes here and there off the bench and so on. I'd like to see something approaching a formation that we can kind of start relying upon. I'd like to see a return to Meepo getting a shot off before you've had a chance to screw the cap off your bottle of Coke or whatever it is you're having yourself. I'd like to see us take the game to Cork in the way that we did to Derry and Rovers, and make them feel like they're in a game right from the off. It's been a while since Cork City have come to Tolka, so let's remind them how hostile it can be on and off the pitch. Hopefully the Riverside is in good voice. I thought, to be honest as well, despite how frustrating and chaotic and edgy the night did feel on Friday, I thought the Riverside maintained their optimism and singing voices and so on very well on Friday. They didn't chuck in the towel at all. I was impressed by them once again. So hopefully the chicken run is in full voice to give the Cork City wingers a bit in the ear. I'd like to see a clean sheet. Frankly, if you talk, with the defenders and the caliber of goalkeeper and defenders we have, hopefully Sean Gannon is back. And I'm led to believe that his injury and Sam Bone's injury aren't terribly serious. So it it would be great to see one or both of them back involved. That, if you had told that back four that you'd only or the back five, whatever it might be, including the goalkeeper, that they'd only keep one clean sheet in the first 5-6 games, they'd be horrified. I think. So um, I think there's a lot to be proven, but I think we can certainly do it. I'm not sure if Shawnee Maguire is available for Cork. I believe he went off with an injury last weekend. So look, it's there for us, and this is the first game now where I think there's a little the pressure is on us to perform, but there was pressure on us obviously on the run in last season, and game in the last 3 games. We delivered, and I'd be expecting and hoping the same on Friday.
Cork are off to a fairly decent start. They're still early days, but they're on 5 points, so not too far behind ourselves. I think Sean Maguire didn't start last week, Dunny, because he did pick up a knock. Whether or not he's back this weekend, we'll have to wait and see. Rory Keating will, I assume, start up front anyway. But Tim Clancy would be happy enough with his return from their 5 games. I think it's 5 points, but sorry, they've only played 4 games, excuse me, because of the Rovers game that was called off. He has a bit of a spiky history with shells. I think most of us will remember certain shenanigans up in United Park and Drogheda when we won the title in 2019.
Hmm.
Do you think that adds any extra spice to this game?
Well, none of our management team or players were around then, I guess. So I'd hope maybe some people in the main stand might remind Tim of that night, or how we generally have gotten the best of him wherever he's been. Yeah, he's a bit of a throwback, all right, in a time when the league has never seen, I think, more competent, coherent, speaking, media savvy managers who know how to play the game, and as in the media game, or how to carry themselves. He's a bit of a throwback to when I would have started following the league, or even before that, where a bit kind of rough and ready, a bit rough around the edges, spiky, as you said. And I'm sure he'd absolutely love to come and plunder a few points at Tolka, but there's a reason that we're probably going to be favourites. I think objectively we have a better team. Objectively, we have a better manager. And hopefully that comes through on Friday, and that we don't feel burdened by the position that we find ourselves in this early in the season. I'd say one goal now. If we take the lead on Friday, the roof will come off the place, and I think there'll be a lot of frustration that could be vented with a goal or two, and then everything will be right as rain again.
Yeah, you could feel that last Friday night, that if the ball went in, the place would have erupted. So hopefully we'll have another sellout from Michelle's point of view, and would be good to see a big travelling support from Cork. No doubt, there's a very old rivalry there between both sides, and not too much love lost, I think I can say safely. So, Donny, just before we wrap up, any other business that's popped up on your radar this week across the wacky world of LOI?
Well, none that I can think. It's been a mad weekend. I had a gig last night, and the 2 games back to back on Friday and Saturday did me in. There was, I suppose, some people might have seen on Friday, myself and Connor Latka, aka Scottish Reds, were doing a sort of an interview slash is kind of a documentary on Connor, really. I think now it's for balls.ie, but sort of brought to you or in association with Rockshore, as the new beer sponsor of the league. I think they intend on doing a sort of a vignette, a mini documentary with fans from every club in the league. both divisions, I think. That's what I've been told. But so they were filming Connor in Scotland. They sent a crew up from Lincoln, I believe, to video him and his
Wow.
dad in Falkirk and at the airport. And then in Dublin, we were up in the Cat and Cage, did some filming there, did an interview about, um, from my perspective, what it's like seeing fans flying into Ireland to watch football rather than flying in the opposite direction. Um, and Connor was down with them in the ground long before kickoff, looking around the place in the dressing room and that kind of thing. So, um, and they filmed us throughout the game. That's why we weren't standing where we'd normally stand. But yeah, unfortunate game to pick though, having the camera in your face for 90 plus just aching minutes of frustration rather than maybe the Jerry game on the opening night when Coppa 90 came to town was a lot more flamboyant and overall a lot more enjoyable. But sure, you can't, that's the fickle nature of football, which is kind of what I said to them as I whipped the microphone off my chest and stormed out at full time. But yeah, so that was good to see. Rockshore obviously making an effort to put a bit of oomph behind their campaign with the league. It's not just lip service. It's not just throwing up some posters or signage and whatever. And those, some people at Tolka might have seen as well. The fan zone is nearly ready to rock there, down in the corner between the Drumcondra end and the Riverside, which is, Rockshore put some money into getting that operational as well. So hopefully, possibly not in time for this Friday, but hopefully, if not for this Friday, for the following home game, which I believe is against Bows, that we might have our fan zone open with thanks to Rockshore. And I was given a lot of stick. Some of my friends might class me as a beer snob. Most of those people drink Coors Light though, so their opinions don't really count. But you know who you are. But we got to sample some Rockshore on Friday, and it's not as bad as I thought it would be. My expectations were subterranean; they were that low, but it's better than that. It's passable, and I'll happily drink it in the fan zone when it opens, so we can look forward to that. So it's good to see, just again, a bit of pizzazz around the coverage of the league. There's been a lot of cameras and a lot of media attention in the early weeks down around Tolka and in the league in general, and I've never known anything like it. We talked about scalpers, people selling stuff, flags and souvenir plates, and
Mm.
you've had, as I said, the lads from Coppa 90 down, and now Balls.ie doing bits, and yeah, the reaction even to this podcast has been great. So it just shows that this isn't a fad, and that people, more and more people are really beginning to gravitate towards it and give it the attention and the respect that it always deserved, really.
Thanks, Dunny. Yeah, we're not sponsored by Rockshore, by the way, but I'm sure if they want to get in touch, Dunny will probably Dunny might include a grand opening gig up in the corner behind the toilets. That can all be arranged, Dunny, I'm sure. But yeah, no, Connor Latka, great for Connor. He's a fairly incredible bloke. I've known him around Talk for many years. Him and his band of merry men from Bonnie, Scotland, coming over to matches, and they keep coming back. So well done, Connor. Look forward to seeing the clip, and of course you, Dunny. That's Coppa 90 and Rockshore and Balls.ie. These fellas just keep seeming to find you, Dunny. You're like you have, it's like attracting the media. You're just a,
Yeah,
what can I say?
if we could just monetize it now, Andy, I'd
Yeah,
be onto a winner.
exactly. Well, we're putting it out there now. Just before we go, as Dunny mentioned, we had some really great feedback, and thanks to everybody who's taken time to listen to us. As I mentioned earlier, all our contact details are in the show notes. Don't be afraid to get in touch. And we look forward to this Friday night in Talca, and we wish the women's team the best as they travel to Waterford Saturday afternoon. So for this week, Dunny, thanks again for everything. Thanks for your expertise. and we will speak to you all next week.